"Prove your innocence. I'll set you free," challenged the Duke. But one witness changed everything. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. Rain struck the high windows of Ashbourne Hall in steady rhythm, drowning the whispers of the servants who moved like shadows across the ballroom floor. The chandeliers burned low, their light trembling on the gilt mirrors and the polished shoes of men too proud to stand close to one another. At the far end of the room, the Duke of Harborough sat in a high-backed chair that had been moved there for the occasion. His expression was carved from stone. In front of him stood a young woman in a simple grey dress, her hands clasped tightly together. "State your name," the Duke said. "Clara Whitmore, Your Grace." Her voice was quiet, but it carried. The gathered guests turned to one another, their curiosity sharpening like a blade. The Duchess, seated to the Duke's right, folded her gloved hands and exhaled with exaggerated patience. "And you are accused," the Duke continued, "of stealing the Duchess's emerald necklace. Found, I am told, in your drawer." The murmurs returned. Clara lifted her chin. "I did not steal it." The Duke leaned slightly forward. "You deny the charge, though the evidence lies before you." "I deny the charge," she said again, her voice trembling at first, then steadier. "I have never touched her Grace's jewels." Someone in the back gave a soft, cruel laugh. It was Mrs. Halford, the housekeeper, who had long considered Clara too proud for her position. "Perhaps she thought the emeralds would suit her plain gown," the woman murmured to her neighbor. Clara heard it, but did not turn. "If they were found in my room, then someone placed them there," she said. The Duchess gave a short, incredulous sound. "Placed them there? You accuse my household of deceit?" "No, Your Grace," Clara said quickly. "Only of error." The Duke's gaze stayed fixed on her. He had the look of a man accustomed to obedience, and her quiet resistance unsettled him. "The evidence is strong. You understand the gravity of what you say." "I understand that I am innocent," she answered. For a moment there was silence, the kind that feels heavier than noise. The Duke spoke again, his tone sharp, but even. "Then you will prove it. Prove your innocence, and I shall set you free." He gestured toward the small table beside him, where the velvet box lay open, the necklace inside, gleaming beneath the candles. "This was found by Mrs. Halford and 2 footmen. Do you suggest they lied?" "No, Your Grace." "Then how do you explain it?" "I cannot. Not yet." Her hands twisted together. She wanted to look at the floor, but forced herself not to. If she showed weakness, she was lost. The Duchess rose, unable to remain seated. "My lord, must we indulge this farce? She was found guilty the moment that necklace appeared. There is no need for this spectacle." "Sit down, Eleanor," the Duke said without turning to her. "We will have order." His voice carried through the hall, quiet but commanding. Even the guests who had come merely to witness the humiliation grew silent. "Tell us what happened that night," the Duke said. Clara swallowed. "I went to the Duchess's chamber after dinner to bring the tray of tea. Lady Fenton was there, and the Duchess dismissed me after a few minutes. I returned to the servants' hall, then to my room." "At what hour?" "Near 10. "And when were the jewels discovered missing?" "The next morning." The Duke tapped the armrest of his chair with one gloved finger. "And no one saw you between 10 and morning?" "No one, Your Grace." "That is unfortunate," he said quietly. She hesitated, then said, "I believe someone saw me. I believe they could tell you where I was." "Who?" Her eyes searched the room. So many faces. Some indifferent, some pitying, some hostile. "Mr. Graham, the footman. He brought the Duchess's cloak from the parlor that night. He saw me in the corridor outside the kitchen." The Duke gestured. "Bring him." A servant hurried out, and a minute later the young footman appeared, pale and uneasy. He bowed awkwardly. "Mr. Graham," the Duke said, "you heard the charge. Did you see Miss Whitmore in the corridor that night?" Graham's eyes darted between them. "Yes, Your Grace. Around 10, I think. She was carrying linen from the washroom." "Was she alone?" "Yes, Your Grace." "And where were you?" "Going to fetch the Duchess's cloak from the parlor." The Duke paused. "Then you can confirm that Miss Whitmore was not near the Duchess's chambers at that time?" Graham hesitated. No, Your Grace. I can only say where I saw her, not where she went after. The Duchess leaned toward her husband. You see, even the servants hedge their words. This is wasting our time. Clara turned to the footman. Mr. Graham, did I seem hurried? Frightened? No, miss. Just tired. Thank you, she said softly. Enough, the Duke interrupted. That will do. You may go. The young man bowed and left, clearly relieved. The Duke folded his hands. Your witness does not clear you. No, but it proves I spoke truth. The Duchess rose again. My lord, Eleanor, he warned. She drew back, fuming. The guests watched with a fascination that bordered on cruelty. The Duke stood, tall and still. You say someone placed the jewels in your drawer. Who would do such a thing? Clara hesitated. She could feel every gaze pressing upon her. Someone who wished to harm me. Or perhaps to protect another. The Duke's brow lifted. You speak in riddles. Because I do not know the answer, she said. But I know it was not I. The Duchess laughed quietly. You expect us to believe a thief would speak with such virtue. Clara turned toward her. I expect nothing, Your Grace. Only that you allow truth to be found. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The Duke's eyes met hers, and something unreadable passed between them. A servant stepped forward with a small tray of documents. Your Grace, the accounts you requested. The Duke waved him off. Leave them. He sat again, resting one elbow on the armrest. Miss Whitmore, you entered my service 3 years ago? Yes, Your Grace. Have you ever been dismissed before? No, Your Grace. Any record of dishonor? None. Then why? He said, almost to himself. Would you risk everything for a handful of stones? I would not. He regarded her quietly. Your answer is too simple. It is the truth. The Duchess exhaled loudly. She is playing at virtue. Let us end this. The Duke ignored her. You have served faithfully until now, he said to Clara. And yet the evidence is against you. There are witnesses, there are the jewels, there is motive enough. What would you have me do? Listen, Your Grace. That is all I ask. The murmur of the crowd swelled again. A few of the older guests exchanged uneasy glances. The Duke's patience thinned. I have listened, he said. What remains to hear? Clara took a step forward. There is someone who knows more, someone who has not spoken. Who? She hesitated. I dare not say without proof. Then you waste my time, he said, his tone hard. The Duchess smiled faintly. Clara's throat tightened. Your Grace, she said, I swear before heaven, I am innocent. If there is justice in this house, it will not condemn me for another's crime. The Duke looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, Justice must be seen, even when mercy is costly. He turned to the steward. Mr. Dunn, prepare the papers for her dismissal. She will be escorted from the grounds by morning. A ripple of satisfaction ran through the guests. Clara's hands fell to her sides. So it is done before it begins, she said. The Duke did not answer. Then you were never seeking truth, Your Grace, she said softly. Only obedience. He froze. No one spoke. Her words had cut deeper than any plea. Take care how you speak to your master, the Duchess warned. Clara's gaze shifted to her. If I have no name left to guard, I have nothing left to fear. Enough, the Duke said sharply. You will hold your tongue. But she did not. You condemn me because it is convenient, because you must protect appearances. Yet somewhere in this room stands the true thief, and they will remain silent, because they know I cannot prove it. Gasps followed. A gentleman in the back muttered, She has lost her senses. The Duke's eyes narrowed. You accuse someone here? I accuse no one, Your Grace. I say only that truth has not yet spoken. Then it never shall, the Duchess said coldly. The Duke drew breath to speak again, but a sudden noise interrupted him. The sharp echo of hurried footsteps in the corridor beyond the closed doors. A voice murmured, too low to catch, followed by another sound, closer this time. The guards exchanged glances. What is that? The Duchess demanded. Before anyone could answer, the doors swung open with force. A man stood on the threshold, drenched from the rain, his coat dark with travel. The servants nearest the door stepped back in shock. The Duke turned, his expression unreadable at first, then changed, as though the color had drained from his very soul. The man bowed slightly. "Forgive the intrusion," he said. "I arrived without announcement, but I could not remain silent. Not tonight." "Who are you?" the Duchess asked sharply. He looked at her, then at the Duke. "You know me, Your Grace, or did once." A collective gasp moved through the hall. The Duke rose slowly, his hand gripping the edge of his chair. "Impossible," he whispered. "You—" The man stepped forward, his eyes steady despite his exhaustion. "Yes, Your Grace. Edward Latham, returned at last." The guests turned from one to the other, confused and fascinated. Whispers surged like wind through dry leaves. The Duke's voice came low and strained. "You were presumed dead." "So I heard," Edward said. It suited many to believe so. The Duchess's face had gone pale. "What business brings you here?" "The business of truth," he said simply. The Duke's jaw tightened. "You will have none of that in my hall. Leave now, before you regret this entrance." Edward's gaze did not waver. "Before you condemn her, Your Grace, perhaps you should first remember what you owe me." The hall was still. Rain tapped against the windows, soft but insistent, as if it too demanded to hear what the stranger would say. Edward Latham stepped forward into the candlelight, his wet coat clinging to his shoulders. The Duke's hand rested on the arm of his chair, gripping it as though it were the only thing keeping him upright. No one spoke. The Duchess stared at the newcomer with disbelief that turned slowly into alarm. Her voice was brittle when she finally found it. "Edward Latham is dead. He drowned off Calais 5 years ago." Edward gave a faint, tired smile. "No, madam. I was very much alive, only ruined. And I see the news of my death was convenient to some." The Duke's voice cut through the murmurs. "Why have you come here?" "To speak the truth," Edward said. "Not to you alone, but before all who sit in judgment of this young woman." Clara's breath caught. She looked at him uncertainly, wondering why this stranger would risk the Duke's fury on her behalf. The Duke took a step forward. "You will leave this house at once. I will not allow a dismissed servant to disrupt my court." Edward's gaze did not falter. "Dismissed," he said quietly. "Is that how you remember it, Your Grace? You dismissed me after I confessed to a crime I did not commit, because you asked me to." The words dropped into the air like stones into deep water. The guests stirred, confused, curious. The Duchess rose half out of her chair, whispering something the Duke ignored. Clara turned toward Edward. "You say you confessed to a crime?" He nodded, his eyes still on the Duke. "Yes, years ago, when certain accounts went missing from the estate books. His Grace was under pressure from creditors and Parliament alike. I was his steward, and the blame fell conveniently upon me." "That is a lie," the Duke said sharply. "You forged those accounts." "Did I?" Edward asked. "Or did I take the burden you could not carry?" Gasps spread among the assembly. The Duchess pressed a trembling hand to her throat. "You speak treason." Edward's tone remained calm. "I speak memory. And I came tonight because I have seen again the same injustice I once endured. An innocent accused while the powerful hide behind appearances." The Duke's eyes hardened. "You will not compare yourself to this girl." "I do not," Edward replied. "I compare you to yourself." The Duchess moved toward her husband. "Do not let him stay here another moment. Send for the constable." "There will be no constable," Edward interrupted. "Not yet. I have something to show His Grace." From within his coat, he drew out a folded letter, sealed but worn from travel. He placed it on the table beside the velvet box containing the emeralds. The Duke stared at it without reaching. "What is that?" "A copy of a letter you once wrote me," Edward said. "I kept it because I thought someday you might wish to read your own words again." The Duke's voice dropped to a growl. "You forged it," Edward shrugged. "Open it then. Let them see." The Duke's jaw tightened. His hand hovered above the letter but did not touch it. He turned instead toward the assembled guests. "Leave us." No one moved. The Duchess's voice rose, sharp with fear. "You cannot order them away now. They have heard too much." The Duke glanced at her. For the first time, his composure cracked. "Eleanor, I said leave, but she did not move either."
The air seemed charged, held taut by the tension between the three of them, Duke, steward, maid. Edward stepped closer to the Duke, his voice quieter now. "If you are innocent, read it. If you are not, I will read it for you." The Duke hesitated, then broke the seal with a sudden motion. The wax snapped like a gunshot. He unfolded the paper, scanned the first lines, and stopped. His shoulders stiffened. The Duchess reached for the letter, but he held it out of her reach.
"Where did you get this?" "You wrote it," Edward said. "The night before you dismissed me. You asked me to claim the false accounts as my own, in exchange for a sum of money that was never paid. I kept your letter, because I knew one day you would try to forget." The Duchess's voice shook. "This is nonsense. The man is a fraud." Clara spoke softly from where she stood. "If it is nonsense, then why does His Grace look so pale?" All eyes turned to the Duke. He folded the letter slowly and set it back on the table. "You are clever, Edward. Clever enough to invent what you cannot prove." Edward's smile was faint. "You never did like the truth when it came in plain words." The Duke faced the crowd again, forcing his tone back to authority. "This man was dismissed for dishonesty. His word carries no weight in this hall. We will hear no more of him." Clara's voice broke through the murmurs. "Then hear me." The Duke turned, startled by her audacity. "You will remain silent." "No, Your Grace," she said. "Not while a man risks his name to speak what I have tried to say. If you would not hear him, then hear me." He stepped toward her. "Take care, girl." "Care has already failed me," she replied. "When I was accused, I begged for justice and found none. If truth exists here, it must be spoken by those who have nothing left to lose." The Duchess scoffed. Listen to her. A servant preaching virtue. But Clara did not look at her. Her eyes stayed on the Duke. "You said I might prove my innocence. I cannot do it alone. Let this man speak, and if his words are lies, then let the truth reveal itself." The Duke's hands clenched behind his back. For a moment, it seemed he might refuse outright. Then, as if weighed down by invisible chains, he nodded once. "Speak then. But speak quickly." Edward inclined his head. "Thank you, Your Grace. On the night the jewels were said to be stolen, I was near the estate. I came because I received word from a former footman that something was amiss. I entered the grounds unseen and watched from the garden terrace." The Duchess gasped. "You were trespassing." "I was," Edward admitted. "And from the terrace, I saw a light in the Duchess's chamber, though the household slept. I saw a figure leave the room, carrying something wrapped in cloth. I could not see the face, only the gown, a pale blue gown, trimmed with lace." The Duchess froze. The guests turned toward her. She wore that very gown now. The Duke's voice was low. "You mean to accuse my wife?" Edward's eyes did not move from him. "I mean only to say what I saw." The Duchess's color drained, then flared crimson. "This is madness. You think I would steal my own jewels?" Clara spoke softly. "Perhaps to hide them, Your Grace. Perhaps to make another seem guilty." The Duchess's mouth fell open, but no words came. The Duke stepped between them. "Enough. You overstep your place, Miss Whitmore." She drew a breath but did not back down. "You said I might prove my innocence. I am trying." Edward turned to the Duke. "Let her speak. She has earned that much." The Duke's gaze flicked between them, torn between pride and uncertainty. Finally, he gave a short nod. Clara said quietly, "When the necklace was found, Mrs. Halford said it was discovered by accident during the morning inspection. But the drawer had been locked. Only the housekeeper and I had keys, yet mine had been missing for 2 days before that morning." The Duke frowned. "Why did you not say so?" "Because no one would have believed me," she said. "Not when the key was found again, on the very morning of the search, lying on my own table." Edward's eyes narrowed. "That fits what I was told. Someone in the household meant to make certain the blame could not escape her." The Duchess turned away, muttering, "This is a conspiracy." Edward spoke again, addressing the crowd. "When I came to the hall tonight, it was not only for Miss Whitmore. It was to bring back what belongs here." He opened a small leather pouch and drew out a folded document, yellowed with age. This is the record of my dismissal, signed by His Grace himself, along with the ledger that proved the accounts were not falsified by me. I took them when I left, because I knew one day the truth would need a voice. The Duke's eyes widened. You stole those papers. I kept them, Edward said. For the same reason I kept your letter, because you asked me to lie. The Duchess caught her breath. Henry, say something, but the Duke said nothing. His eyes remained fixed on the papers as though they burned. Clara spoke again, her voice low but steady. Your Grace, the truth may shame you, but if you hide it now, you will carry that shame forever. The Duke turned sharply toward her. Do not lecture me. I mean no disrespect, she said. Only that mercy begins with honesty. The Duchess gave a sharp laugh. Mercy? You speak as though you were the wronged one. Perhaps she is, Edward said. Perhaps we both were. The Duke raised his head, his face pale. What do you want from me, Edward? Money? Apology? You could have written from abroad. You need not come here to humiliate me. I came because you taught me silence, Edward said, and I will not teach it to others. The guests stood in uneasy silence. A few began to whisper, uncertain whether they were witnessing justice or ruin. The Duke turned to the crowd. You will all forget this. Do you hear me? Every word. Words cannot be forgotten, Edward said. Only forgiven. The Duke's fist struck the table. Enough! You come into my house, you insult my name. Edward interrupted quietly. The only name insulted here is your own. The Duchess reached for her husband's arm, whispering frantically, do something before he speaks further. But the Duke's eyes were fixed on the letter again. He looked as though he saw something there no one else could. Clara stepped forward once more. Your Grace, she said softly, if you wish to protect your honor, do it through truth. Let this man finish. The Duke looked at her, his jaw set. You would risk everything on his word? I have nothing left to lose, she said. Edward gave a single nod of respect. Nor do I. The Duke's hand trembled slightly. Then he turned to the hall. If you insist on hearing this madness, he said, then you shall hear it all. Speak, Edward Latham. Tell them your truth, and let them judge between us. Edward drew a breath and opened his mouth to continue. But before a single word left his lips, the great chandelier above them flickered violently as a gust of wind swept through the open doors. The candles guttered, and from somewhere beyond the hall came a sharp cry. Servants rushed toward the corridor. The Duchess's maid stumbled in, pale and gasping. My lady, she cried, the Duchess's chamber, it's open, the jewels, they're gone again. The hall erupted. Guests gasped, servants darted toward the staircase, and the Duchess clutched the back of her chair to steady herself. The Duke's voice rang out, sharp as thunder. What did you say? The maid trembled, breathless. The chamber door was open, Your Grace. The jewel box, it's empty again. Everything's gone. The Duke turned toward Edward. You did this! You came here to distract us while your accomplices robbed my house. Edward lifted his hands calmly. I came alone, and you know it. The jewels were already gone once before. Perhaps truth has decided to repeat itself. The Duchess's face had gone white. This is impossible. I locked that box myself before coming down. Clara looked from one to the other. Then someone wished to prove a point, or hide another sin. The Duke strode toward the maid. Who was in the corridor when you found it open? No one, Your Grace, she stammered. Only the door swinging in the draught. Send for Mr. Dunn. Search every room, the Duke commanded. As the servants hurried away, the Duke turned on Edward again. You will remain here until this is resolved. If I find your hand in this, I'll have you imprisoned. Edward's tone stayed steady. I've been imprisoned by your silence once before. I've nothing to fear now. The Duchess sank into her chair, shaking her head. My jewels, Henry. My jewels. Twice stolen. Clara spoke softly, almost to herself. Perhaps never stolen at all. Her words hung in the air until the Duke turned to her. What did you say? She met his eyes. You said before that the necklace was found in my drawer, but if it has now disappeared again, then it was never truly there. Someone has been moving it to control the story. The Duke's expression hardened. You make dangerous suggestions. I speak what logic demands, she said. And logic says the same hand that placed it in my room took it from hers. The Duchess sprang up. You accuse me again? No, Your Grace, Clara said quietly. I only wonder who benefits from all this confusion. Before the Duke could answer, the butler, Mr. Dunn, returned with a cluster of servants. The corridors are clear, Your Grace. No one has left the house. But we found this near the servants' staircase. He held out a small length of blue ribbon. The Duchess gasped. That ribbon, it's mine. Dunn bowed slightly. Yes, Your Grace. It appears torn from one of your gowns. The room seemed to freeze. The Duke turned toward her, disbelief flickering through his eyes. Eleanor? Her lips parted, but no sound came. That proves nothing, she whispered finally. The ribbon could have been dropped days ago. Edward's voice was quiet, but sharp. It matches the gown you wore the night I saw a figure leaving your chamber. The same night the jewels first vanished. The Duchess's hand trembled as she reached for the ribbon. This is madness. You all conspire against me. The Duke's voice fell low. Is it true? Were the jewels never stolen at all? She drew back, cornered. You would believe them over me, over your wife. I believe what I see, he said. Edward stepped closer. Your Grace, let me end this pretense. The jewels were pawned months ago under another name, mine. I was ordered to sell them and repay a private debt. When I refused, you dismissed me, and your lady demanded I disappear to spare your reputation. The Duke's head snapped toward him. That is a lie. Edward shook his head. I can prove it. He reached into his coat again and drew out a second document, an old receipt. This bears the signature of the broker in London, as well as the date and the initials E.H. for Eleanor Harborough. The Duchess let out a faint cry. How did you get that? I was there when you signed, Edward said. You feared the creditors would learn of your husband's debts, so you begged me to keep it secret. Gasps rippled across the room. The Duke stared at her. Eleanor, is this true? She trembled, clutching the back of her chair. You left me no choice. The estate was drowning in debt. I could not bear to see your name dragged through scandal. You sold the family jewels to pay my debts. I meant to replace them before anyone knew, she whispered. But Edward disappeared, and I could not reclaim them. I panicked. When word spread that they were missing, Her voice broke. You framed the girl, the Duke finished. No, I only wanted... She stopped, pressing her hand to her mouth. I did not mean to harm her. I thought if someone were blamed, the matter would be forgotten. It was folly, nothing more. Clara's eyes glistened, but her voice remained steady. Your folly cost me my name, Your Grace. The Duchess turned to her in desperation. I will make it right. I swear it. The Duke's face hardened with fury, though his voice remained low. You have brought ruin upon us. Edward stepped forward. Not ruin, truth. Let it end here, before more lives are broken. The Duke sank into his chair, covering his face with one hand. What would you have me do, Edward? Announce to London that the Duchess of Harborough accused an innocent girl to hide her shame. Announce nothing, Edward said, but set the record right. Clear her name. The Duchess fell to her knees before her husband. Henry, forgive me. I acted in fear. He stared down at her. Fear is no excuse for cruelty. She looked toward Clara. Forgive me, child. I beg you. Clara's heart ached, yet she spoke calmly. Forgiveness is between souls, Your Grace, but truth belongs to all. The Duke rose slowly. Enough. This cannot be decided in whispers. He turned to the guests, who had drawn back in uncomfortable silence. You have all witnessed what pride and deceit can do. Let it be known that Clara Whitmore is innocent of all charges. There was a murmur, half relief, half disbelief. The Duchess covered her face, sobbing quietly. Clara bowed her head. Thank you, Your Grace. But Edward's voice cut in again, steady and solemn. There is more to say. The Duke turned to him, weary. More? Edward nodded. The debt that forced this chain of deceit, it was not paid. The money from the sale was never enough. I returned last week to the broker and learned the truth. The jewels were redeemed by another, someone using your steward's name and seal. The Duke frowned. Impossible. Edward opened the folded receipt again and pointed to a second mark. I recognize this seal. It is yours. The Duke's breath caught. Mine? I do not accuse you, Edward said, but someone used your authority to reclaim them. Someone within your household. A cold silence fell. The Duke turned toward his servants. Who has access to my seal? No one answered. Clara said quietly, Only Mr. Dunn, perhaps. And the Duchess. Dunn shook his head quickly. Never, Your Grace. I would not dare, the Duchess whispered. It was not I. Edward looked toward the Duke. Then who? Before anyone could speak, one of the younger footmen stepped hesitantly forward. Begging your pardon, Your Grace, he said, but I think I can tell you. The Duke motioned him on. Speak. The boy swallowed hard. It was the butler, sir, Mr. Dunn. I saw him in your study late one night after everyone had gone. He was sealing a letter with your crest. When he saw me, he told me to keep silent or lose my position. All eyes turned to Dunn. His face flushed crimson. Lies, baseless lies from a foolish boy. The Duke stepped closer. Is it true? Did you forge my seal? Dunn's lips moved, but no sound came. Finally, he said, I did it for the house, for your grace. The creditors were restless, and the Duchess feared. You betrayed me, the Duke said, his voice cold as stone. You betrayed us all. Dunn's shoulders slumped. I thought it would save you. I thought if the jewels were recovered quietly, no one would ever know. Edward shook his head. And yet here we stand. The Duke turned away, pressing his hand to his temple. How far this rot has spread. Clara watched them, her heart pounding. Then the jewels were taken, sold, redeemed and hidden again. All to protect appearances. Edward nodded. Yes, and now they have vanished once more because deceit cannot remain still. Someone sought to destroy the evidence before it destroyed them. The Duchess whispered faintly. Then who took them this time? Edward looked toward her. That, my lady, is the final question. Just then, another servant entered, holding something small wrapped in cloth. Your Grace, he said nervously. We found this near the stables. The Duke motioned for him to bring it forward. The servant unwrapped the cloth. The emerald necklace gleamed in the candlelight. Gasps rose again. The Duchess staggered back. How could it be there? Edward studied the servant. Who found it? One of the grooms, sir. Where? By the coachman's bench. Clara turned toward the Duke. Then whoever placed it there meant to flee. The Duke looked at Dunn. Was it you? The butler shook his head frantically. No, Your Grace, I swear upon my soul. The Duke's gaze swept the room. Then who else had reason? Edward's eyes narrowed. Perhaps the same person who first found it in her room. All attention shifted to Mrs. Halford, the housekeeper, who had been trying to disappear into the corner. She flinched as the Duke's gaze fell on her. Mrs. Halford, he said quietly. Come forward. She obeyed, trembling. Your Grace, I only did as the Duchess asked. She told me to make sure the jewels were found where they would raise no questions. Clara's heart sank. You placed them in my drawer. Yes, Mrs. Halford whispered. Forgive me, child. I thought it harmless. I never meant to see you dismissed. Edward spoke softly. And tonight? She shook her head. I know nothing of tonight. But when I saw the strangers arrive, I feared the secret would come out. I hid what remained of the jewels near the stables, hoping the matter would end. The Duke stared at her, silent for a long moment. Then he said, You have served this house 30 years, and this is your loyalty. She began to cry quietly. I did it out of fear, Your Grace. Edward looked from her to Clara, then to the Duke. Fear has ruled this hall long enough. The Duke nodded slowly. Yes, it ends tonight. He turned toward the assembly. All of you have heard enough to know the truth. The jewels, the lies, the false accusations. All born of pride and deceit. This house will no longer be governed by either. He looked at Clara, his expression softening. You are free, Miss Whitmore. Free of charge, free of shame. I will see to it that your name is cleared beyond doubt. Clara bowed her head, her eyes shining. Thank you, Your Grace. But Edward's gaze remained fixed on the Duke. And what of the rest? What of the letter you wrote? Will you face that truth as well? The Duke met his eyes. "If I must." "Then let all be known," Edward said quietly. "Let them hear what was hidden in that letter." The Duke's voice was a whisper now. "Not here, not before them." "Then before her," Edward said, nodding toward Clara. "She deserves to know who judged her." The Duke hesitated, then unfolded the letter once more, his hands trembling. He began to read, his voice low. "I, Henry Harborough, admit that the falsified accounts were drawn under my command and not that of my steward. I confess that I asked Edward Latham to bear the blame to preserve the honor of my house." Gasps swept through the room. The Duke lowered the paper, his face pale. "It is the truth." The Duchess sank onto the floor, her eyes wide with despair. "Henry, what have you done?" "I have done what I must," he said. "At last." He turned to Clara. "You see now, Miss Whitmore." "The guilt was never yours." Clara's voice trembled. "Nor the shame, Your Grace." The Duke nodded slowly, as if something inside him had finally broken. Then the Duchess gave a strangled sound. "What have we left to lose?" she whispered. And before anyone could move, she collapsed in a faint at his feet. The hall had emptied. What remained was silence. Thick, uneven silence broken only by the slow ticking of the mantel clock and the faint rustle of servants carrying the Duchess to her chamber. The guests had left in stunned whispers, their carriages rolling away through the mud. Ashbourne Hall, once loud with accusation, was now heavy with remorse. The Duke stood motionless near the long table. The open letter lay beside the emeralds, its confession exposed to the flickering light. Edward Latham stood across from him, his coat still damp from the storm. Clara remained by the doorway, uncertain whether she should leave or stay. It was Edward who spoke first. "You have your truth now, Your Grace. It has cost more than either of us expected." The Duke's voice was low. "Truth always costs dearly. I see that now." He turned to Clara. "Miss Whitmore, you are free to go. The carriage will take you to the vicarage in the morning. You may remain there until I have arranged proper reference for another position." She shook her head. "I need no carriage, Your Grace. I have a place waiting at the parish school. It will do." He looked at her, surprised. "You wish to leave Ashbourne entirely?" "There is nothing for me here," she said softly. "What once was home became a prison. I would rather begin again where no one knows my name." Edward studied her, then the Duke. "She speaks wisely. This house needs silence more than servants now." The Duke's gaze lingered on the letter. "And what of you, Edward? Will you remain to ensure my ruin is complete?" Edward smiled faintly. "I have no wish for your ruin, only your honesty. My name was cleared tonight. That is enough." He reached into his coat, drew out another envelope, and placed it on the table. "My resignation, written years ago but never accepted. Let it stand now." The Duke did not touch it. "Where will you go?" "Where men are judged for work, not birth. Perhaps America," Edward said. "I hear there is room enough there for those who carry their conscience instead of a title." Clara's eyes filled with quiet admiration. "Then you go in peace, sir." "And with my gratitude." Edward bowed slightly. "It was your courage that freed us both, Miss Whitmore." The Duke spoke, his tone subdued. "Before you go, there is something I must say." Edward waited. "I wronged you years ago," the Duke said. "I forced you to bear my sin. No man should bear another's burden. I ask forgiveness, though I have no right to it." Edward regarded him for a moment, then nodded. "You have it. But remember, forgiveness is not a gift to keep. It is a duty to pass forward." He extended his hand. After a long hesitation, the Duke took it. The handshake was brief, awkward, but real. When Edward turned to leave, Clara stepped closer. "Will you not stay for supper, sir? The storm has not passed." He smiled. "No storm lasts forever, Miss Whitmore, and mine has spent itself at last." He walked out without another word. The heavy doors closed behind him, and the Duke exhaled as if something within him had finally broken loose. Clara approached the table. "Your Grace, may I speak plainly?" He nodded, weary. At this point, plain speech is all that remains. "You have made right what was wrong," she said. "That matters more than the shame." He gave a short, humorless laugh. You think confession repairs a lifetime of pride? I think it begins to. He turned toward her. You defend me, even now? After all that was done to you? I defend the man I see, not the one I met that night, she replied. The one who accused me is gone. I saw it in your eyes when you read that letter. He looked at her with something like wonder. You speak as though you understand what I barely grasp myself. I understand that forgiveness is not weakness, she said. It's the only strength that lasts. He lowered his gaze. You should despise me. Perhaps, she said quietly, but I do not. He studied her face, the calm certainty there. It unsettled him more than anger would have. You are unlike anyone I have known, he murmured. Then learn from that, she said. Learn that those beneath you may still stand above you in grace. He nodded slowly. You have been my judge, Miss Whitmore, and a just one. She smiled faintly. You offered me justice, Your Grace. I only returned it. He turned away, staring into the dark window panes. When you leave tomorrow, I shall miss your courage. I hope you remember it instead, she said. The clock struck midnight. Its echo filled the hall, long and solemn. Go and rest, he said quietly. You have earned peace. She curtsied. And you, Your Grace, find it. He watched her walk toward the servants' staircase. Her steps were slow, reluctant. As she reached the first stair, he said, Clara. She turned. It was the first time he had spoken her name aloud. Do not think your years here were wasted, he said. They taught me more than mine ever did. She bowed her head slightly. Then something good was born from what was wrong. When she was gone, the Duke sank into his chair. The hall felt unbearably vast. He looked at the emeralds one last time, then closed the velvet box and set it aside. Morning came grey and silent. The storm had passed, leaving the air clean and cold. Clara stood near the gate with a small carpet-bag. The carriage waited. She looked once toward the house, its windows shuttered, its chimneys smoking faintly, and climbed inside. The road wound through the valley, the fields soaked with dew. She did not cry. She only pressed her hands together and whispered a short prayer for those she left behind. At Ashbourne, the Duke walked through the corridors alone. He paused outside the Duchess's chamber, where the physician was just leaving. She will recover, the doctor said, but she must rest. Her nerves are badly shaken. The Duke nodded. She will go to her sister's in Bath tomorrow. See that the carriage is prepared. Yes, Your Grace. When the doctor was gone, the Duke entered quietly. The Duchess lay awake, pale against the pillows. She looked at him with the weary shame of one who has run out of words. He spoke first. You will leave for Bath at dawn. She nodded faintly. And you? I will remain here. There is much to repair. She turned her face to the window. I never meant to harm her. I know, he said. But intention does not erase consequence. Tears welled in her eyes. Will you ever forgive me? I do, he said simply. Not because I can, but because I must. She closed her eyes. You were always stronger than I. He gave a small, sad smile. No, Eleanor. I'm only learning strength from those I once ignored. She said nothing more, and he left her to rest. Days passed quietly. The house seemed emptier without the rustle of servants or the sound of Clara's laughter in the kitchen. The Duke spent his mornings reviewing accounts, dismissing those who had aided the deceit, and his evenings walking the grounds in silence. One afternoon, he found himself near the rose garden, where Clara had once tended the Duchess's flowers. The beds were bare now, stripped by wind and neglect. He knelt, brushed soil from his hands, and murmured, We will begin again. That night, he sat alone in his study. The letter still lay on his desk. He read it once more, then folded it carefully and locked it away. For the first time, the weight on his chest lifted. Weeks turned into months. The Duchess departed quietly, leaving behind her jewelry box, empty but polished. Edward Latham wrote once from the docks at Liverpool, a brief letter saying he had found passage to New York. The Duke read it twice and placed it beside the others. Ashbourne began to breathe again. The servants who remained worked with newfound calm. Gossip faded. The hall that once echoed with judgment now held silence filled with something gentler. Remorse, and slowly, hope. One morning, the Duke received a small parcel from the parish. Inside was a folded note in Clara's clear hand. "Your Grace," it read, "I pray that Ashbourne stands lighter now. The children here have little, yet they laugh freely. It reminds me that joy does not depend on grandeur, but on peace. May you find the same." He held the paper for a long time before setting it down. That evening, he walked through the halls and stopped before the mirror in the entryway. For the first time, he saw not a ruler of men, but a man himself, aged, flawed, but unguarded. When the spring came, he sent a donation to the parish school under her name. The vicar wrote back to thank him, saying the funds would provide books for the children. He asked if the Duke wished his name mentioned at the dedication. The Duke replied with one line, "Let it belong to the one who taught me mercy." He signed no name. The day felt lighter after that. Servants noticed their master smiled more often, that the air in the house seemed fresher. The portraits in the corridor gathered less dust. The windows stayed open longer. Late one afternoon, he stood again in the garden, where the new roses were blooming. A breeze passed through, carrying the faint scent of earth and promise. For a moment, he thought he heard Clara's voice, the soft rhythm of her laughter carried by memory. He closed his eyes. "Be well, Clara," he whispered. "You were right. Forgiveness is the only strength that lasts." The sun dropped behind the trees, casting long shadows across the gravel path. He turned toward the house, the windows glowing gold in the light, and walked back through the open doors, ready to face the quiet he had earned. The sun was low over the hills when Clara closed the last book on the small wooden desk of the parish school. The laughter of children had already faded down the lane, leaving only the soft hum of crickets in the hedgerows. She gathered the papers, straightened the chairs, and smiled at the chalk dust on her hands. The quiet suited her now. Life had become simpler, steadier, shaped by honest work and the comfort of small beginnings. Outside, the evening light touched the rooftops of the village with gold. Clara stepped onto the path leading to the cottage she rented from the vicar's wife. The air smelled of early summer and hay. As she reached the gate, a carriage appeared on the road, its wheels grinding softly on the gravel. She paused, her breath catching. The driver halted the horses and descended to open the door. A tall man stepped down, his coat plain but perfectly cut. His hair, darker than she remembered, was touched with silver at the temples. Her voice came out as a whisper, "Your Grace." The Duke of Harborough removed his hat. "Forgive the intrusion. I should have written first, but I feared I might lose courage if I waited." She tried to steady herself. "You are welcome here, Your Grace, though I cannot imagine why you would come." He looked around the small yard, the flowers by the porch, the washing line fluttering in the wind. "I came because silence had lasted too long," he said, "and because there are words I should have spoken before you left." She opened the gate. "Then speak them now." He stepped inside, the faintest smile at his lips. "You once said forgiveness begins a new life. I thought I understood, but months passed, and I found peace without joy. Ashbourne is quiet, but emptiness echoes louder than judgment ever did." She folded her hands. "You have rebuilt everything. What more could be missing?" He looked at her. "You." The word hung between them, soft and dangerous. She turned her face away. "Your Grace, please, Henry," he interrupted gently. "Call me Henry. I have not been a duke in my heart since that night." "Then, Henry," she said quietly, "you forget what stands between us. I was your servant. Your wife lives apart from me," he said, "by her own wish and mine. We live in friendship now, nothing more. The bond we once had died long before that trial." She took a slow breath. "You owe me no explanation." "Perhaps not," he said, "but I owe you truth. You gave it to me once, and it freed me. Let me offer the same." He moved closer, his voice steady, though his eyes betrayed emotion. "When you left Ashbourne, I told myself I sought redemption. I dismissed half my staff, sold the carriages, reopened the tenants' farms. Yet each night, when I walked those halls, I heard your voice. You became the measure of my peace. I could not escape it, nor did I wish to." She met his gaze, torn between disbelief and longing. "Do not say what cannot be meant. It is meant," he said softly. "You taught me to see truth, Clara, and truth is that I love you." Her breath trembled. "You cannot—" "I can," he said. "I do." The words were simple, spoken without grandeur, yet they struck through her heart like light through glass. She turned from him, gripping the gatepost. "Love cannot rewrite who we are. The world would not permit it." He stepped nearer, his voice low but firm. "The world once ruled me. No longer. I have no fear of it now." She looked up, and their eyes met. "You would face scandal for me? For you, I would face truth again, and gladly," he said. "I would rather be judged beside you than praised alone." The cottage door creaked as the wind shifted. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she said, almost to herself, "You once condemned me before 100 eyes, and now you stand here asking my heart?" "Yes," he said, "because I learned that judgment without understanding is blindness. I see you now, Clara, entirely." Tears welled in her eyes, but she brushed them away quickly. "I never wanted apology, only fairness. And I offer neither apology nor favor," he said. "Only partnership. A life where we build something honest." Her voice trembled. "You ask for much." "I ask for everything," he replied, "because anything less would dishonor what you are." The stillness between them deepened. The light dimmed to gold, the air warm with the scent of grass and earth. She whispered, "And if I say no?" He smiled faintly. "Then I will wish you happiness and never trouble you again. But I will hope every day that your heart changes." She looked at him a long while. "Do you even know what life with me would be?" "Yes," he said. "Plain mornings, quiet rooms, no courtiers or masquerades. You would scold me when I forget to smile, and I would thank you for it." She gave a small, broken laugh. "You speak of it as though it were paradise." "It would be," he said simply. A silence fell, gentle but charged. The wind stirred the leaves above them. Clara lowered her gaze, her voice barely a breath. "I cannot be a duchess." "Then be yourself," he said. "That is all I ever needed." She looked up again. The honesty in his eyes left no refuge for doubt. Slowly, she stepped back, letting him into the yard. "If you meant to persuade me, you have done so poorly," she said. "My heart yields before my reason has time to object." He took her hand carefully, as though afraid to break the moment. "Then let it yield, Clara." Her fingers tightened around his. "And what will the world say when they see the Duke of Harborough marry a maid?" He smiled. "They will say what they always say, that titles are fragile things, but I will know that I have married truth itself." She laughed softly, tears shining on her lashes. "You make words sound like promises." "They are promises," he said, "and I will keep them." They stood together in the fading light, neither moving for a long time. Then he said quietly, "Will you walk with me, just as we are?" She nodded. "Yes." They followed the path down to the river, where the water reflected the first stars of evening. The great oak spread its branches overhead, the same tree beneath which she had once prayed for freedom. The Duke stopped there, looking out over the water. "It was here," he said, "that I first understood what I had done. That night after you left, I stood where you stand now. I thought of how you faced me in that hall, unafraid, though everything was against you. You were braver than I have ever been." She looked at him gently. "Courage is born from necessity, not pride." He turned to her. "And love is born from courage." Her breath caught. "You should not say such things." "I cannot unsay them," he replied. "Not now." She hesitated, then said softly, "I forgave you long ago. But love is not born from forgiveness." "Then let it be born now," he said. He took her hands again. "Clara, I have spent my life guarding honor and forgetting kindness. You reminded me that one without the other is hollow. You are the only person who ever saw the man beneath the name. If there is redemption for me, it lies with you." She stood silent, tears glimmering. "You will have to build from ruin, Henry. Are you ready for that?" "With you beside me, yes," he said. "We will build something better than what was destroyed." She searched his face, as if looking for any trace of the man who had once condemned her. She found none, only sincerity and a quiet ache that matched her own. Her voice broke as she whispered, "I thought I had forgotten you. You never could," he said softly, "because we are both made of the same truth." Her tears fell freely now, and he reached up to brush one away. His touch lingered, unsure, reverent. She did not pull back. "Say it again," she whispered. "Say that you love me." "I love you," he said. "Not as a duke, not as a man seeking pardon, but as one soul finds another." She closed her eyes. "Then take what is left of my heart, for it has belonged to you longer than I dared admit." He drew her closer, his voice low near her ear. "No, Clara, you keep it. I only ask to share it." They stood beneath the oak, the wind soft around them, the world holding its breath. When he kissed her, it was gentle at first, almost uncertain, but it deepened as though the years of silence dissolved in that single moment. When they parted, she leaned against him, her laughter trembling with disbelief. "If this is a dream, do not let it end." "It is no dream," he said. "Tomorrow we return to Ashbourne, together." She smiled through her tears. "As master and servant again?" "As equals," he said. "As husband and wife, if you will have me." Her eyes widened. "You would marry me?" "I would do nothing less," he said. "Let them whisper, let them doubt. They did the same when I sought truth, and still the world turned. Let it turn now." She pressed a hand to his chest. "You mean it." "With all that I am," he said. "I have learned that honor without love is dust. I will not live in dust again." She drew a shaky breath, her smile breaking through tears. "Then yes, yes, Henry, I will." He exhaled, laughter and relief mingling. "You make me the happiest man alive." "You already were," she teased softly. "You simply did not know it." He took her hand, kissed it, then held it against his heart. "You once said truth frees us. Now I know what freedom means." They walked back toward the village as night fell, the stars bright above the quiet fields. The vicar's wife, seeing the two figures in the distance, paused by her window and smiled without knowing why. When they reached the gate, the Duke stopped again. "Tomorrow I will send word to the parson. We shall be married here, under the open sky, where no walls can close upon us." She looked up at him, her voice trembling with joy. "And what of Ashbourne?" "It will be our home," he said. "Not my estate, not your memory, ours." She smiled, unable to speak. He lifted her hand once more and kissed it gently. "Clara Harborough," he said softly, as though testing the sound. "It suits you." Her eyes filled with tears. "And what will become of the Duke of Harborough?" He smiled. "He will be the man who finally learned to love." A breeze swept through the garden, carrying the scent of roses. Clara rested her head against his shoulder, and he held her as though the world beyond that moment no longer mattered. The church bell rang in the distance, its sound rolling across the valley like a promise kept. He looked down at her, his voice almost a whisper. "We began in judgment, Clara. Let us end in grace." Her answer came softly, steady and sure. "We shall live in it." And as the night deepened around them, they stood together beneath the stars, no longer master and servant, but two souls redeemed by truth and bound forever by love. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.